Fairbanks Focus is a locally produced public affairs program created in part by University of Alaska Fairbanks, KTVF, and Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us here at Fairbanks Focus Alaska View. I'm Annette Pearson. Today I am joined by a very special guest, Caitlin Hedberg of Planned Parenthood of the Great Northwest. Thanks for joining us, Caitlin. I really appreciate you Skyping in this morning. Tell us a little bit about why you're here. I definitely wanted you to come and talk about a particular Senate bill that's going on right now, but tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for Planned Parenthood.
Certainly. Nanette, well, before we go any further, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show. My name is Caitlin Hedberg, and I'm the Development Officer for Planned Parenthood of the Great Northwest, and I work in the state of Alaska. I live in Anchorage. I'm joining you folks in Fairbanks today from Anchorage. So thank you for having me. I mostly do development work in the state of Alaska, but I'm happy to speak with you about the Senate bill that we saw introduced or any of the upcoming activities that we have going on around that. And additionally, anything that we can talk about regarding the work of Planned Parenthood in Fairbanks. I'm happy to chat about that too. So thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. You know, a lot of my close friends know that I'm a huge Planned Parenthood supporter, and so it's nice to be able to bring you here to a public format and be able to talk about what's really going on with legislature right now. So thanks for being here.
Definitely, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about Senate Bill 49. I know there's a lot of stuff we want to talk about, but I really want people to know about this Senate bill that's coming up and what they can do to be active in their own government.
Okay, perfect. Well, let me start by just saying succinctly what Senate Bill 49 attempts to do. It is an effort to define what is a medically necessary abortion in the state of Alaska, specifically for low-income women. In doing so, it places a politician squarely in between a woman and her doctor and severely restricts the access to abortion, which is a safe and legal procedure in the state of Alaska that has been upheld and protected numerous times, and again, does so primarily or really only for low-income women. This is an economic justice issue, as you know. So.
Well, and I know I've said it before too. It oftentimes seems like politicians are targeting the poorest of the population, and I know that the Senate bill really affects those people the most. And not to mention, you know, the autonomy that we have as women to be able to decide how many, when, and if we'll ever have children, and the idea that because, you know, somebody introduced a Senate bill that those might be compromised, and that autonomy might be left to, say, my representative. It's a little bit frightening. So.
Yes, that's true. You know, at Planned Parenthood, we believe that the most important medical resource that we provide is accurate information. And the Supreme Court and the Alaska State Constitution has guaranteed umpteen times that women should have access to all of the legal information and resources to all of the options that they have around a pregnancy. So, yes, indeed, autonomy is a huge concern.
So what should people do if they would like to, you know, first of all, how soon is this bill going up and onto the floor, and then what can people do as far as talking to the representatives about it?
Definitely. Well, first let me just say a little bit more about why specifically Planned Parenthood is opposed to this bill, if that's all right for you, and then I'm happy to address next steps and how people can get involved if they would like to. Basically, in Alaska, women with low incomes are granted legal access to the pregnancy options available to them, and that was upheld in a 2001 Supreme Court decision that ordered non-discriminatory public funding of abortion. And as I mentioned earlier, Senate Bill 49 seeks to restrict that access. and at Planned Parenthood, we know as a trusted healthcare provider, and I certainly know as an individual, that pregnancy decisions are deeply personal and often very complex decisions for women. And that is why Planned Parenthood believes that these decisions should be left to women, to their families, and to have the consult of their medical doctor. No one should be making medical decisions except a woman and her doctor, certainly not a politician. So to answer your first question of the timeline of this bill, as you probably know, we heard testimony on Wednesday. Senator Coghill, the person that introduced this bill, invited a handful of people to testify on Wednesday. Unfortunately, none of those people were from Alaska, and they don't represent Alaskan women. What we heard on Wednesday from that panel was a lot of information that has been widely discredited by professional organizations.
You were saying that some of the testimony that they've given is pretty much been debunked by most of the medical society, is that right?
That's correct. A lot of the information that we heard on Wednesday, unfortunately, has been widely discredited again by the professional associations that I mentioned, such as the American Cancer Society, the American Psychological Association, and unfortunately, Nanette, when decisions are made based on erroneous information, as you can imagine, they can have really disastrous and very dangerous effects for women's health and for Alaskan women. So it's a concern that the information that we heard, unfortunately, a lot of it has been widely discredited on Wednesday.
I do want people to know, how important it is that they know what's going on in the political realm and how it does affect our decisions, in just something as simple and personal as healthcare. And I want people to know how they can contact their representatives and how they can get their voices heard.
Great. Well, let me just mention then that this upcoming Monday, the public will have the opportunity for comment on this bill, and anyone is welcome to telephone in from their local judiciary house. More information on how to do that is on the Planned Parenthood Votes Northwest website. If you're in Juneau, then you're also welcome to testify in person. We hope to have over 30 Alaskans, women mostly, but men as well, testifying on Monday in Juneau in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee about their concerns about this bill. So there are ways for Alaskans to participate from across the state, and for more information on how to do that, please refer to our website, Planned Parenthood. So let's just spell that out. It's ppvotenw.org.
Awesome. And what time is that? Are they taking those comments?
I think the schedule will all be posted on our website, so folks should just check in with the website to get the latest details on the scheduling for the day.
Awesome. And I really want to encourage our viewers out there, take part in your own political activism. Do realize that this does affect a whole myriad of people, and it may not affect you, but it might affect someone very close to you and someone that that really needs those choices available to them. And also, Caitlin, like I said, I'm a huge supporter of Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood does so much in our community as far as healthcare and accessing healthcare goes. And I know for myself, I would not have been able to get timely, regular visits if it wasn't for things like the breast and cervical health check program. And can you tell our viewers a little bit about that program and how that helps Alaskan women?
Yeah, definitely. That's a program I'm particularly excited about. Just to sort of set the stage here, Planned Parenthood has existed in Alaska since 1966, and we now have 5 health centers. As you know, one of our larger health centers is in Fairbanks, right on Airport Boulevard there. And we provide a comprehensive range of services at the Fairbanks Health Center. It's a full service health center. Most of what we do are preventive services, such as family planning and counseling, STI screening and treatment, pregnancy tests, important vaccinations such as the HPV vaccination, counseling, well women exams, and One of the things that we've really had the chance to focus on recently has been just what you mentioned, the breast and cervical health outreach that we've been doing in Alaska. Unfortunately, Alaskans have a higher rate than the national average of female breast cancers. And part of the response to this has been the ability for us to work with the state and the federal government on outreach, targeted outreach to Alaskans to reduce the barriers that prevent early detection of breast cancer. Barriers can include lack of information or misinformation, fear. So we're really excited in Fairbanks to be able to partner with the with several different partners. Actually, Breast Detection Center, I believe, is one of them. To do some outreach and then treatment for low-income women in Fairbanks. The Breast and Cervical Health Program is a state-funded program that provides breast and cervical health screening services to women who meet certain income eligibility requirements. Perhaps they don't have insurance, or they can't meet their insurance deductible. Sometimes people have insurance that will not pay for breast and cervical health screenings or treatment. So Planned Parenthood in Fairbanks has a partnership with the Breast Cancer Detection Center to identify eligible women and also provide them with the actual mammography screening. In 2013, and I'm now speaking about the state of Alaska rather than Fairbanks exclusively, in 2013, we plan to provide screening clinics as well as educational outreach events that really work towards reducing the barriers that women face towards detecting early detection of their breast cancers. So I think I also wanted to just repeat that unfortunately, the state of Alaska has a higher incidence rate of female breast cancer than the rest of the nation, and that is one of the reasons that Planned Parenthood is really focusing on early detection of breast and cervical cancers.
Well, and I know for me, for the breast and cervical health check program, I had insurance for a little while, but there wasn't quite enough there to cover certain things. And so for me, I wouldn't have been able to even get like my regular pap smear and breast exam without that program. And then there was a time when we'd found something that was a little bit abnormal and it needed further looking at, and just being able to have someone be able to look at it further and not have to come up with however much money it was to just get an ultrasound. It was really nice that the BCHC program covered that and was able to refer me. And it ended up being nothing, but just the fact that BCHC is there for people to get that further looked at. And then if it is something, that there's someone there to provide more care.
That's exactly right, Nanette. We're really we're excited to have this program because it allows us to really provide that follow-up treatment for patients who do have abnormal results and see them through some of the treatment as well. And most of the time, it will be just an assurance to the patient that something is benign, but it's such an important thing for early detection of these types of cancers. So what I would encourage all of Alaskan women to do is to make a phone call to our health centers and schedule an initial appointment. And those that are eligible for that program will certainly receive the care they need, but we provide services for all Alaskan women. We're here for everyone. So.
Well, awesome. Well, I know that covers a really wide spectrum of people between the ages of 21 and 64. So if you're afraid that you're not getting the care that you're supposed to be getting, like regular pap smears and breast exams, check it out. You may be very surprised at how generous this program is and how many people actually qualify for it. And again, I want to urge our viewers out there to check out Planned Parenthood Votes. See when they're taking calls on Monday about Senate Bill 49. And is there anything else you'd like to tell our viewers out there, Caitlin, about Planned Parenthood or any other way that they can be involved?
In closing, I just wanted to remind everyone that 1 in 5 Americans has visited a Planned Parenthood at some point in her life. And that's because well over 90% of what Planned Parenthood does nationally are life-saving screenings and STI treatments and well woman exams and family planning. And we're just honored to be here to serve Alaskans. So thank you for your support.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us all the way from Anchorage this morning. And
thank you, Nanette.
Well, that about does it for my part this morning here at Fairbanks Focus Alaska View. Join us again next week. Next up, we have Samantha Larson.
Hello there, and thank you for joining us. I'm Samantha Larson with the Fairbanks Focus, Alaska View. Today I'm sitting down with Dr. Donald Hampton. He is the Research Assistant Professor at the Geophysical Institute at UAF. Dr. Hampton, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
So, everyone's heard the expression, it doesn't take rocket science to figure that out, but today we're talking about the Visions mission, which in this case takes multiple rocket scientists to do. So tell me a little bit about the Visions mission.
Okay, well, at Poker Flat Research Range, which is about 30 miles north of town, on the night of February 6th, at about 11:20 p.m., we launched a 4-stage rocket into Aurora that was happening over northern Alaska. And the purpose of this rocket was to look at what's called ion outflow. Mm-hmm. And so I think most people would know that, at least here in Alaska, that the aurora is caused by electrons coming down from outer space into our atmosphere and causing the lights. Mm-hmm. Now what happens when that happens as well is that heats up the atmosphere, upper atmosphere, and that'll heat up some oxygen atoms to high enough temperature that they actually will escape. They will be energized and escape the atmosphere. And so we were looking at specific processes by which this happens, how this happens in the auroral activity.
Kind of in a sense, studying what gives these atoms, is that correct?
That's
so
correct.
Much energy
atoms
atoms and ions to escape?
That's right. Yeah, because it's been known for quite a while. There have been satellite missions that have flown over and have seen these streams of ions moving out. But they fly over really quickly, like 7 kilometers per second, or about 5 or 6 miles per second.
Right.
So this doesn't take much. It doesn't take long to go through the aurora and not see what's going on. So the known about it for a while, but the good thing about rocket missions is you can launch into specific conditions that we want to see.
Right.
And the rocket goes a little bit slower, so you spend more time going over the aurora where it's happening. And we use the instruments on board the rocket and also some ground-based instruments to see what's happening in the aurora and try to figure out exactly where this energization is happening, and then also see and yeah.
Oh no, you're fine.
Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt you. I was just going to mention I was reading an article about this on NASA's official website,
Right.
And I read a part that said that using the rockets to do this type of study is a lot better because they're more accurate, because you can launch them when you want at a specific time, rather than using the satellites, which kind of just, by chance, maybe it's gonna, go over the aurora.
That's right. So on a typical night for a launch into an aurora, we can actually take the countdown. When you launch a rocket, you always count backwards from 10.
Right, that's the most exciting
and
part.
that always happens. It's pretty cool. I know the lady who does that. She does a very good job. So what we usually do is wait up till about 3 minutes before the launch. We can sit there and wait for the right conditions to happen. So it's not at a specific time it's going to happen. We wait for the right conditions to happen.
You just kind of you just have to.
And you just wait there and you sit and we watch and cameras that are all over Alaska and see what's happening with the aurora. And when the conditions are right, then the principal investigator, the chief scientist, will say, okay, now's the time to launch. And then they'll start counting from there. So we've got about 3 minutes before it actually launches. And then this rocket takes about a 15-minute flight, so it takes about 6 or 7 minutes to get up to the peak where we want to do the main measurements. So you've got to be able to plan ahead about 10 minutes for what the aurora is doing.
So you have to wait for a specific time frame, a specific window. And how long is that window that you have?
If you're launching into what's called a substorm, and that's when the aurora gets very active at night, that lasts about 20 to 30 minutes. So you have a little bit of time if you get about a 10-minute window, about a 10-minute launch sequence. But no, that's not much time.
No.
There's a lot of nerves up there in the launch room when we're sitting around waiting.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, and isn't there, correct me if I'm wrong, a 2-week window of the aurora that you kind of.
Right. So what we typically want to do is because we use the ground-based cameras to see when the aurora is happening, especially in northern Alaska, we want to launch when the moon is down or is not full.
Right.
When the moon's full, if there's any kind of clouds, that just obscures the visible aurora that we're looking for. So we usually pick a 2-week window around what's called moon down, when the moon is at the minimum, and use that as our launch window. It also works out well because sort of labor things, the people are out there late at night, and you can only do that for 2 weeks at a time. So it all kind of works out pretty well that way.
So you've got a 2-week window, and within that 2-week window, you've got a 20 to 30-minute window. So would you say it's kind of like trying to hit a bullseye within a bullseye?
That's right. That's right. And it doesn't always work. A couple of years ago, we had a launch where we had a 2-week window, and either it was cloudy or the aurora just didn't happen. And so we had to actually extend the window into the next month, next moon down
But
period.
that's disappointing.
It was disappointing,
frustrating.
and it got very boring because you're sitting out there watching clouds go by or watching clear skies with no aurora. So yeah, it can be a little nerve-wracking at times. But this night worked out really well. It was actually cloudy at Poker Flat on that night, but we wanted aurora over northern Alaska, over Kaktovik and over Fort Yukon, between Fort Yukon and Kaktovik. And we actually had very good aurora that night, and everything worked out real well.
Good mission, successful, lots of good data.
From what we've seen so far, all of the instruments on board, and there were about 6 or 7 instruments, all of them were working as expected, including some cameras which were looking down at the aurora from space while we were looking up from the ground. So it'll be fun to coordinate those 2 measurements and see what we can get with those as well.
So now, does this rocket that you guys sent, does it have a specific name, or?
It's called Visions, and I'm scratching my head because I don't remember exactly what that acronym stands for. But the IO stands for ion outflow, like I talked before. And the rocket itself, this is a little bit different. We've flown what's called Black Brant rockets before, which is a 4-stage rocket. This one had a different stage in there, and I'm not sure what they're calling this one now.
That's okay. So when the rocket is sent up, is it collecting data and all these instruments working as it goes up and as it goes down?
That's correct. Well, what happens is when it gets launched, it's going through the lower atmosphere, which is very high density. So some of these instruments you can't turn on until it gets below a certain density in the atmosphere.
Okay.
So usually we turn them on about a minute into the launch, and at that point they start collecting data. And then they're sending data down by a radio link to antennas on the ground, and we're collecting the data on the ground. Because when the rocket comes down, it comes down very fast, and there's not much to collect of it afterwards. So we have to collect the data as it's flying.
Okay. So once the rocket, getting tongue-tied, excuse me.
Okay.
Once the rocket is launched, when it descends, did this one specifically go into the Atlantic Ocean? Am I correct on that?
Actually, the Arctic Ocean. In this
Arctic
case.
Ocean,
yeah.
okay.
So, that's because it went very high. This one went up to about 800 kilometers in this case, about 600 miles up, which is pretty high for these rockets. We also have some smaller rockets that go up to about 200 kilometers or so. But yeah, this one, the main stage impacted in the Arctic Ocean north of Kaktovik.
Okay. And how long has the group? Tell me about the group that put this together. Who was it? Where'd they come from?
So most of these missions are NASA missions, and so to get one of these going, scientists will have an idea, and he will put together a team from different institutions. So in this case, it was from Goddard Space Flight Center at NASA Center in Maryland. Okay. And then also he had some colleagues that were from the Aerospace Corporation in El Segundo, California. And so together they came up with the idea they wanted to study these ion outflows, and they said, okay, what instruments do we need to do that? And they picked a set of instruments to look at the electron precipitation that's creating the aurora. They picked some instruments to look at the ions themselves that are outflowing, and they also picked a new instrument, or it's been around for a while, but this is kind of a new instrument for a rocket that actually looks at the neutrals that come out as well, because the ions as they move up will also pick up neutral atoms and move them along as well. And then it also had some instruments to measure the electric fields and magnetic fields as we flew through those as well. So the team is about 8 or 10 scientists together. And then what we provide at Poker Flat is expertise on knowing when the aurora is going to happen and providing the ground-based instruments that
Alaska
support
knowledge.
that. Right, because it's interesting how many scientists come up who are studying the aurora, and this is the first time they've seen it when they come to Poker Flat.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
It's quite interesting.
So what is the main objective, if you will, for this study?
Right, so like I said before, the main objective is this ion outflows. And it's been seen before, but most missions, like for a satellite, like I said, the satellite flies through very quickly, and it doesn't always fly through the right time. So the idea was to fly through when we knew there was going to be these energization that creates these ion outflows. And the reason the ion outflows are important is because that changes the density of the atmosphere at these high altitudes.
Right.
And these are altitudes where other satellites fly through all the time. And if you change that density, that actually adds drag to satellites, and it can cause them to degrade slightly.
Okay.
The orbits to degrade slightly. Yeah.
So it can make them come down prematurely. Is that
Right. If
right?
you had a satellite that was designed for a 6 or 7 year lifetime, and we have a lot of these ion outflows, or the upper atmosphere expands because of input, say from solar heating or from these auroras, then it can shorten the lifetime of that satellite. So it's important for people who are planning these kind of satellite missions to be able to predict how often these are happening, when they're going to happen, where they're going to happen, and so.
Well, and then they can plan the satellite's lifespan more accurately.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Is there any other benefit to studying these ion outflows?
Well, it also impacts, so these ion outflows, what they do is they follow our magnetic field out into what's called the magnetosphere. And that's actually where the energization that happens, that causes the aurora. And so these ions are heavier than most of the ions out there, which are basically protons. So these are oxygen ions, which are much heavier. And that just causes the magnetosphere to behave differently. And so we're trying to understand that as well. So this is a bigger picture looking at what's called space weather or magnetospheric physics.
And the reason, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I did some reading before the show. The reason that the aurora is the best time to study this ion outflow is because the aurora is the time when the energy is most increased in the atmosphere?
Right, well, that's the aurora is actually the source of the energy for these ion outflows.
It's when it's most active, correct?
When it's most active, that's right. So what we were looking for was a fairly active aurora that was underneath the path of the rocket flight. And that's what we got. Yeah, so the energy that causes this ion outflow comes from the aurora itself. And you know, we've looked several times to try and understand what's going on, but we didn't have exactly the right set of instrumentation, but this is probably closer to the right set of instrumentation to be able to figure this out.
Okay, and how long has this group been planning this launch?
So this proposal went in 2009, so it's taken about four and a half years to make this happen. And
wow.
that's a pretty typical lifetime. You have to put it in there, you have to do some planning beforehand, you have to build the instruments that go on the
right.
payload part of it, and then NASA has to put together the rocket. So it takes a little while to do that.
That's a lot of preparation for 15 minutes.
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right. Yeah.
A lot of sitting and, you know.
And another reason there's a lot of nervousness in the launch room because
sure.
you don't want to shoot
nail biting going on.
Exactly. You don't want to shoot it at the wrong conditions. That's not very.
Some nail biting, maybe some stress eating going on.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be me. Well, just. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or would you like to tell our viewers how they can get more information on this mission?
Sure. There's an NASA website. I don't have it memorized in my head.
That's okay.
But if you Google Visions and Roland and Goddard Space Flight Center, you'll find a page that's specifically about this mission, so you can read about that there. And then if you want to know more about Poker Flat, you can go to the GI website, which is gi.alaska.edu. And there you can look under the Space Physics Group and see a link to Poker Flat Research Range and see what we do. We've been launching rockets since 1969.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
And I just want to add one last thing for our viewers. If you'd like to see the actual video of the rocket launch, go to youtube.com and type in the search engine Visions Rocket Launch 2013. So I think it's about a 33 second video. I mean, you can't see a whole lot.
It's pretty amazing what smartphones can do now, because I wasn't with the smartphones.
Oh, nice. iPhone 5, maybe?
I don't know exactly.
I'm just kidding. All right, well, that's going to do it for us here today on the Fairbanks Focus Alaska View. I'm Samantha Larson. Dr. Hampton, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Have a good one.